The biggest problem with the Indiana Fever right now is not just basketball, it is trust. And fans are making that crystal clear in a way the organization can no longer ignore. Caitlin Clark fans are done being polite. They are not quietly sitting back and accepting every coaching decision, every PR campaign, or every media narrative being pushed around this team. What started as frustration online has now turned into a full-scale backlash against head coach Stephanie White and the Fever front office. And honestly, the numbers tell the entire story. The Fever recently revealed their official opening night roster for the 2026 season. On the surface, it looked like a standard promotional rollout. Player graphics, jersey numbers, hype posts, excitement for opening night. But buried inside those social media numbers was something the organization probably never expected fans to notice. Caitlin Clark's roster post exploded with nearly 378,000 views. That was expected. She is the face of the league, the biggest attraction in women's basketball, and arguably the most important athlete the WNBA has ever had financially. But then something shocking happened. Sophie Cunningham's post nearly matched her. 357,000 views. That number completely changed the conversation because it exposed who fans are actually emotionally invested in. It showed that the modern WNBA audience is gravitating toward players who bring intensity, personality, toughness, and entertainment value alongside Caitlin Clark. Meanwhile, other established stars on the roster were nowhere close in engagement. That is not an insult to those players. It is simply reality. Fans are voting with attention now. Clicks, views, engagement, merchandise, ticket demand. And those numbers are beginning to paint a picture the league may not want to admit publicly. The old hierarchy is changing. And that tension exploded when the Fever tried promoting Stephanie White's USA basketball coaching selection. Instead of celebration, the comment section turned into complete chaos. Fans flooded the post with criticism, frustration, sarcasm, and outright anger. Some questioned her offensive system. Others accused her of misusing Caitlin Clark. Several brought up her Vanderbilt coaching record. Many specifically attacked the idea of taking the ball out of Clark's hands and using her off the ball. That is the core issue driving this entire debate. Fans do not believe Caitlin Clark should be used as a decoy. They believe she should control the offense, dictate tempo, run pick-and-roll action, create transition opportunities, and operate as the primary engine every possession possible. To them, anything else feels like wasting a generational talent. And whether people agree or disagree with that criticism, one thing is undeniable. The frustration is real. This is no longer just a few angry accounts on social media. It has become a massive online movement driven by fans who obsessively analyze games, rotations, spacing, offensive schemes, and player usage. They are watching every possession closely, and they are not afraid to challenge the coaching staff publicly. That is what makes this situation so dangerous for the Fever organization. The fan base no longer trusts the messaging. When the team releases polished PR content, many fans immediately interpret it as damage control. When media personalities defend the coaching staff, fans accuse them of protecting the establishment. When analysts suggest Caitlin can succeed off the ball more often, fans see it as an attack on what makes her special. Everything becomes a battle, and now the pressure heading into opening night is enormous. Because this season is no longer just about wins and losses, it is about expectations. The Fever are carrying the weight of the entire league's growth. Ticket prices skyrocketed because of Caitlin Clark. TV ratings exploded because of Caitlin Clark. Sponsorships exploded because of Caitlin Clark. So fans expect results immediately. They expect entertaining basketball. They expect offensive freedom. They expect Clark to dominate the ball. And they expect the organization to maximize the moment instead of overcomplicating it. If the offense struggles early, the backlash will get louder. If Clark spends long stretches standing in the corner, the outrage will multiply instantly. And if the Fever underperform, every coaching decision will be dissected possession by possession online. That is the reality Stephanie White and the Indiana Fever are walking into this season. The organization thought they were entering a championship era. Instead, they may be entering the most heavily scrutinized season in WNBA history. The organization thought they were entering a championship era. Instead, they may be entering the most heavily scrutinized season in WNBA history. And the craziest part about all of this is that the pressure is not even coming from traditional sports media anymore. It is coming directly from the fans themselves. The balance of power has shifted completely. 10 years ago, a franchise could survive bad rotations, questionable coaching decisions, or awkward public relations campaigns because the narrative was controlled by television analysts, newspaper columns, and a handful of major reporters. If the team wanted to push a message, they simply pushed it through the media machine and most fans accepted it. That world is gone. Now every single possession gets clipped, replayed, slowed down, analyzed, debated, and dissected by thousands of basketball fans within minutes. A questionable substitution becomes a viral argument. One awkward offensive set turns into a 2 million view debate on social media. One bad quote in a press conference becomes ammunition for an entire week of criticism. And nobody in the WNBA is experiencing that reality harder than Stephanie White. Because whether fair or unfair, fans have already decided she represents the old basketball establishment. In their minds, she symbolizes the resistance against the Caitlin Clark revolution. Every time the offense slows down, every time Clark moves off the ball for multiple possessions, every time another player initiates the offense while Caitlin stands in the corner, fans see it as proof that the coaching staff fundamentally does not understand what made her the biggest star in the sport. That is why the anger feels so personal online. Fans are not simply criticizing losses, they are criticizing philosophy. And once a fan base starts believing a coach is actively suppressing the strengths of a superstar player, the relationship becomes almost impossible to repair. What makes the situation even more explosive is that Caitlin Clark herself rarely fuels the drama publicly. She does not go into press conferences attacking coaches. She does not throw teammates under the bus. She does not start controversies online. In fact, most of the time she tries to stay diplomatic and composed no matter how chaotic the media environment becomes around her. But ironically, that silence has made fans even more protective of her. They feel like they need to defend her because she refuses to defend herself publicly. That emotional connection between Clark and the fan base is unlike anything the WNBA has seen before. Fans do not just support her basketball talent, they see her as the reason they started watching the league in the first place. To them, she is not just another rookie sensation or star player, she is the central attraction, the franchise centerpiece, the economic engine driving the entire ecosystem. And because of that, every decision around her becomes political. Even simple basketball adjustments become emotional flashpoints. Take the off-ball debate, for example. In normal basketball discussions, moving a point guard off the ball sometimes is not controversial. NBA teams do it constantly. Golden State uses Steph Curry off the ball all the time. Teams experiment with spacing and motion offenses every season. Under ordinary circumstances, it would just be another strategic conversation. But with Caitlin Clark, fans view it completely differently. Why? Because they believe her greatest superpower is controlling the game with the ball in her hands. They see her court vision, transition passing, deep shooting range, and playmaking instincts as the very thing that transformed women's basketball into must-watch entertainment for millions of new viewers. So when they see her standing stationary in the corner while someone else dribbles the air out of the ball, they do not interpret it as strategy. They interpret it as sabotage. That is why the criticism becomes so intense. And the Fever front office may have underestimated just how emotionally invested this fan base really is. The organization likely believed fans would trust the process. They probably assumed winning would calm everything down eventually. But the problem is that fans are no longer waiting patiently for results. They want immediate proof that the franchise understands exactly what it has in Caitlin Clark. Because from the outside looking in, many fans genuinely believe the Fever are sitting on the most marketable athlete in the history of women's sports, and somehow still overthinking the formula. To them, the blueprint feels obvious. Play fast, spread the floor, let Caitlin control the offense, surround her with shooters, attack in transition, create chaos for defenses. Simple. So every time the Fever looks slow, stagnant, or overly structured, fans immediately panic. And those fears only intensified after last season's roller coaster. Fans remember the injuries. They remember the lineup experimentation. They remember the inconsistent spacing. They remember the awkward stretches where the offense looked disconnected. They remember the games where Clark appeared visibly frustrated. Most importantly, they remember the media narratives that followed. Because while fans were criticizing the offense, many television analysts and league insiders were defending the coaching decisions. Some even suggested the team operated better with more balanced ball handling responsibilities instead of letting Clark dominate possession after possession. That argument completely infuriated the fan base. To them, it sounded insane. You have to understand how Clark supporters view her. They do not see her as merely a talented young player. They see her as a once-in-a-generation offensive engine comparable to the greatest playmakers basketball has ever produced. So when analysts imply the offense should intentionally reduce her control of the game, fans hear something almost offensive. That disconnect between the fans and the basketball establishment has now become the defining tension surrounding the Fever, and it is creating an unbelievably hostile environment online. The USA Basketball Post was proof of that. Under normal circumstances, a coach being selected for Team USA would be celebrated. It would be viewed as an honor, a sign of respect within the sport. But instead, the comment section turned into a referendum on Stephanie White's entire coaching philosophy. Fans were not discussing the World Cup, they were discussing Caitlin Clark. That says everything. Even conversations unrelated to Clark somehow become about Clark because fans believe every major decision inside the organization ultimately impacts her development, her brand, and the future of the league itself. And honestly, from a business standpoint, they are not entirely wrong. The financial impact Caitlin Clark has had on the WNBA is staggering. Attendance exploded, merchandise sales exploded, national television attention exploded, social media engagement exploded, corporate sponsorships exploded. Entire arenas started selling out primarily because fans wanted to see her play. Road games became events. Some franchises reportedly experienced their highest ticket demand in years when Indiana came to town. Secondary ticket markets surged. Celebrity attendance increased. Sports debate shows that barely mentioned the WNBA before suddenly dedicated entire segments to Clark every week. The league entered a completely different economic universe almost overnight, which is exactly why fans feel so much ownership over this situation. They believe they helped build this moment. And in many ways, they did. The modern sports economy is driven by attention. Fans are no longer passive consumers. They are active participants in shaping narratives, building brands, amplifying clips, and influencing public perception. A massive online fan base can completely alter the trajectory of a league. Caitlin Clark's supporters understand that power very well. That is why they refuse to stay quiet. And this is where things become truly dangerous for the Fever organization. Because once fans lose trust in leadership, every single move becomes suspicious. If the team posts a hype video, fans call it propaganda. If the coach praises balance, fans hear anti-Caitlin messaging. If another player gets promoted heavily, fans accuse the organization of trying to artificially create equality where none exists naturally in the marketplace. The skepticism becomes endless. Even perfectly normal basketball decisions get interpreted through the lens of a larger cultural war happening around the team. And the players themselves are caught in the middle of it. That part often gets overlooked. Players like Kelsey Mitchell, Aaliyah Boston, and others are elite athletes who have worked for years to establish themselves in this league. But now they are operating inside an environment where almost every conversation gets sucked back into the Caitlin Clark orbit. That creates tension whether people want to admit it or not. Because the reality is that Clark's popularity dwarfs almost everyone around her. Not slightly, massively. The social media numbers prove it. The television ratings prove it. The ticket demand proves it. The merchandise sales prove it. And Sophie Cunningham's massive engagement numbers revealed another uncomfortable truth for the league as well. Fans are gravitating toward personalities, not just resumes. Sophie has cultivated an image that modern sports audiences love. She is emotional, physical, unapologetic, competitive. She embraces controversy instead of hiding from it. Fans see authenticity there, and authenticity drives modern sports fandom more than carefully scripted public relations campaigns ever will. That is why her engagement exploded. Fans feel like they know exactly who she is. Meanwhile, more traditional corporate messaging often feels robotic by comparison. And this creates a massive branding challenge for the WNBA moving forward. For years, the league tried to present itself through polished institutional messaging. But the modern audience wants raw emotion, rivalries, personalities, drama, and authenticity. They want stars they can passionately support or passionately criticize. Caitlin Clark brought millions of those fans into the league instantly, but with that attention also came chaos. Because modern sports fandom is loud, very loud, and social media rewards outrage more than nuance. That means every Fever game this season could become a war zone online depending on how the offense looks. Imagine opening night. The arena is packed. National media cameras everywhere. Massive expectations. Millions watching online. Now imagine the Fever start slow offensively. Imagine Clark spends several possessions without touching the ball consistently. Imagine the team struggles in half-court sets. Imagine they lose a close game. The reaction online would be nuclear. Clips would flood social media within minutes. Podcasts would explode. YouTube breakdowns would dominate the algorithm. Fans would demand answers immediately. That is the environment this franchise is living in now. No patience, no grace period, no room for confusion. And perhaps the most fascinating part of this entire story is that the WNBA itself still seems unsure how to handle this new reality. Because historically, leagues prefer centralized control over narratives. They want stability. They want unified messaging. They want carefully managed media relationships. But Caitlin Clark's rise disrupted all of that. Independent creators now hold enormous influence in the basketball conversation. YouTubers, podcasters, TikTok analysts, and fan accounts can generate millions of views discussing the Fever. Sometimes their content reaches more people than official league coverage. Traditional gatekeepers no longer control the discussion, and the establishment clearly does not like that. You can feel the tension every time critics get labeled trolls or accused of spreading negativity. There is an ongoing battle happening between institutional media and independent fan-driven coverage. Fans notice that too, and it only reinforces their distrust further, because from their perspective, independent media is at least acknowledging the frustrations they actually feel. Whether every criticism is fair is almost irrelevant at this point. Emotion drives fandom more than objectivity ever will, and emotionally, many Fever fans believe they are watching a franchise risk fumbling the greatest opportunity in league history. That is the fear underneath all of this anger. Fear. Fear that the organization will overcomplicate things. Fear that politics and egos will interfere with basketball. Fear that outdated systems will limit Caitlin Clark's full potential. Fear that the league itself does not fully understand what kind of cultural phenomenon it has created. That fear fuels every argument online, and the opening night roster engagement numbers accidentally expose just how massive the divide has become, because those numbers revealed who fans are emotionally investing in, who drives attention, who generates conversation, who moves the business. And in modern sports, attention is power. The Fever may technically control the roster. They may control the coaching staff. They may control the official messaging. But increasingly, it feels like the fans control the narrative. And if the organization cannot align basketball success with fan expectations soon, this situation could spiral into something far uglier than criticism on social media. Because once a fan base becomes convinced leadership is the problem, every loss becomes evidence. Every bad quarter becomes confirmation. Every awkward offensive possession becomes proof. Every disappointing result becomes another reason for outrage. That is how sports pressure snowballs into a full organizational crisis. And right now, heading into this season, the Indiana Fever are standing directly in the middle of that storm. And the scary part for the Indiana Fever is that this storm is only getting started. Because once expectations reach this level, there is no such thing as a normal regular season anymore. Every single game becomes a referendum on the future of the franchise. Every substitution becomes controversial. Every post-game quote becomes dissected like a political speech. Every offensive drought becomes a national conversation online. That is the reality of the Caitlin Clark era. And the Fever front office may still be underestimating just how emotionally invested this audience has become. Fans are not watching this team casually. They are studying it obsessively. That is why the reaction to Stephanie White has become so intense. Many fans genuinely believe they are witnessing a power struggle between old-school basketball thinking and a completely new era of entertainment-driven basketball. Whether that perception is fair or not almost does not matter anymore because perception becomes reality in modern sports culture. And perception right now is brutal. The internet has essentially split the Fever discourse into two completely different worlds. On one side, you have traditional basketball analysts, league insiders, and media veterans arguing that team chemistry, balanced offense, defensive structure, and long-term development matter more than simply giving Caitlin Clark the ball every possession. On the other side, you have a rapidly growing army of fans who believe the answer is obvious. Stop overthinking. Give the superstar control. Play fast. Shoot threes. Let chaos happen. Those two visions are colliding in real time. And the reason the conflict keeps escalating is because Caitlin Clark represents more than just basketball to many people now. She represents disruption. She represents change. She represents a new audience entering women's sports and demanding something different from what the league traditionally offered. That makes her incredibly powerful, but it also makes everything around her incredibly volatile, because disruption always creates resistance. There are longtime league supporters who resent how much attention Clark receives. There are media personalities frustrated that every conversation eventually becomes about her. There are fans of other players who feel like their favorites are being erased from the spotlight. And there are basketball purists who dislike the idea of one player becoming larger than the entire league itself. All of those tensions now surround the Fever every single day, which is why the social media metrics from the roster reveal were so revealing. Those numbers were not just engagement statistics, they were political indicators inside the WNBA ecosystem. Caitlin Clark dominating attention was expected, but Sophie Cunningham nearly matching her engagement? That sent a message nobody can ignore anymore. Fans are gravitating toward personalities that feel emotionally aligned with the Caitlin Clark movement. Players who appear fearless, outspoken, competitive, emotional, fiery, and entertaining are benefiting massively from this new audience. That is not accidental. Modern sports culture thrives on emotional connection. Fans want players who feel authentic. They want visible passion. They want rivalries. They want intensity. They want players who seem real rather than corporate trained. And Sophie Cunningham has mastered that image perfectly. Meanwhile, many traditional stars in the league were built in an entirely different media environment. A quieter environment, a more controlled environment, a less chaotic environment. The arrival of Caitlin Clark shattered that ecosystem overnight. Now every player is being evaluated not only by basketball production, but by visibility, personality, marketability, and entertainment value. That can be uncomfortable to admit, but it is true, and the Fever are sitting at the center of all of it. That is why ticket sales, ratings, and fan engagement have become such sensitive topics around the organization. Fans constantly monitor those numbers because they believe those metrics validate their arguments. If attendance dips slightly, critics blame coaching. If engagement drops, fans blame marketing. If ratings spike, supporters credit Caitlin Clark alone. Everything becomes part of the narrative war. And the organization cannot escape it anymore. The Fever tried presenting a united front. They tried emphasizing team basketball. They tried promoting balance. They tried positioning the roster as a complete collective rather than a one-player phenomenon. But fans simply are not buying that framing. To many viewers, this is the Caitlin Clark era first and everything else second. That is why criticism becomes so explosive whenever fans feel the franchise is not fully maximizing her strengths. You can see it in the language they use online. Why is she standing in the corner? Why is the offense so slow? Why are they taking the ball out of her hands? Why are they trying to make everyone equal? Why are they suppressing the superstar? Those questions dominate the conversation constantly, and from the organization's perspective, that creates an impossible balancing act. Because basketball reality is more complicated than fan emotion. A coaching staff cannot simply let one player freelance every possession forever. Teams need defensive structure, players need touches to stay engaged, rotations matter, chemistry matters, fatigue matters, matchups matter. But fans do not want complexity right now. They want results. And more specifically, they want excitement. That is the key part many people miss. This is not just about winning games, it is about entertainment. Caitlin Clark changed viewing habits because of the style she plays with. The deep threes, the transition passing, the fast pace, the unpredictability, the creativity. Fans feel energized watching her play. They feel like something historic might happen every night. So when the Fever looks slow or overly methodical, fans feel disappointed even if the basketball logic technically makes sense. Emotionally, it feels wrong to them. That disconnect is driving almost every controversy surrounding the team. And the pressure becomes even heavier because the WNBA itself desperately needs this moment to succeed. That is the uncomfortable truth nobody wants to say out loud. The league has never experienced attention at this scale before. Corporate sponsors are paying attention in ways they never did previously. Networks are investing more heavily. Arena demand is rising. Social media visibility is exploding. There is real money suddenly flowing into women's basketball at unprecedented levels. But with that money comes expectations. Massive expectations. Because investors, advertisers, broadcasters, and executives all want proof that this growth is sustainable beyond the initial Caitlin Clark phenomenon. They want proof the league can turn viral attention into permanent mainstream relevance. That is why every Fever game suddenly feels so important. The franchise is not just representing Indiana anymore. It is carrying the pressure of the entire league economy, and fans know it, which is why they become furious when they feel the organization is mishandling the opportunity. To them, this should be simple. Build everything around Clark. Play the most entertaining basketball possible. Lean fully into the chaos. Stop resisting what fans clearly want. But organizations rarely move as fast as fan emotions do. Front offices think about long-term sustainability. Fans think about immediate gratification. Front offices think about systems. Fans think about stars. Front offices think, and the organization cannot escape it anymore. The Fever tried presenting a united front. They tried emphasizing team basketball. They tried promoting balance. They tried positioning the roster as a complete collective rather than a one-player phenomenon. But fans simply are not buying that framing. To many viewers, this is the Caitlin Clark era first and everything else second. That is why criticism becomes so explosive whenever fans feel the franchise is not fully maximizing her strengths. You can see it in the language they use online. Why is she standing in the corner? Why is the offense so slow? Why are they taking the ball out of her hands? Why are they trying to make everyone equal? Why are they suppressing the superstar? Those questions dominate the conversation constantly. And from the organization's perspective, that creates an impossible balancing act. Because basketball reality is more complicated than fan emotion. A coaching staff cannot simply let one player freelance every possession forever. Teams need defensive structure. Players need touches to stay engaged. Rotations matter. Chemistry matters. Fatigue matters. Matchups matter. But fans do not want complexity right now. They want results. And more specifically, they want excitement. That is the key part many people miss. This is not just about winning games, it is about entertainment. Caitlin Clark changed viewing habits because of the style she plays with. the deep threes, the transition passing, the fast pace, the unpredictability, the creativity. Fans feel energized watching her play. They feel like something historic might happen every night. So when the Fever looks slow or overly methodical, fans feel disappointed even if the basketball logic technically makes sense. Emotionally, it feels wrong to them. That disconnect is driving almost every controversy surrounding the team. And the pressure becomes even heavier because the WNBA itself desperately needs this moment to succeed. That is the uncomfortable truth nobody wants to say out loud. The league has never experienced attention at this scale before. Corporate sponsors are paying attention in ways they never did previously. Networks are investing more heavily. Arena demand is rising. Social media visibility is exploding. There is real money suddenly flowing into women's basketball at unprecedented levels. But with that money comes expectations. Massive expectations. Because investors, advertisers, broadcasters, and executives all want proof that this growth is sustainable beyond the initial Caitlin Clark phenomenon. They want proof the league can turn viral attention into permanent mainstream relevance. That is why every Fever game suddenly feels so important. The franchise is not just representing Indiana anymore. It is carrying the pressure of the entire league economy, and fans know it, which is why they become furious when they feel the organization is mishandling the opportunity. To them, this should be simple. Build everything around Clark. Play the most entertaining basketball possible. Lean fully into the chaos. Stop resisting what fans clearly want. But organizations rarely move as fast as fan emotions do. Front offices think about long-term sustainability. Fans think about immediate gratification. Front offices think about systems. Fans think about stars. Front offices think, how are we not dominating already? That emotional logic creates incredible pressure on everyone involved. And if the Fever cannot align performance with hype soon, the frustration may eventually spill beyond social media and start affecting the real-world atmosphere around the team itself. Because sports history has shown this pattern before. When fan bases lose faith in leadership, the environment changes. Crowds become tense. Every mistake gets louder reactions. Every bad stretch creates anxiety. Patience disappears. The energy around the organization shifts completely. Right now, Indiana is dangerously close to that territory. The fans are energized, but they are also restless, excited, but deeply suspicious, passionate, but increasingly impatient. That combination can either create one of the greatest sports atmospheres in the country or one of the most toxic. And with opening day approaching fast, the Indiana Fever are about to discover which direction this entire situation is heading. And what makes this entire situation even more fascinating is how fast everything changed. Just a short time ago, the Indiana Fever were barely part of the national sports conversation. They were another rebuilding WNBA franchise trying to develop young talent and slowly climb back into relevance. Games were not dominating headlines. National debate shows were not dissecting every coaching adjustment. Social media was not exploding after every rotation change. Then Caitlin Clark arrived. And overnight, the franchise transformed from a rebuilding basketball team into one of the most heavily discussed organizations in all of sports. That kind of transformation sounds exciting on paper. More attention, more money, more fans, more opportunities. But what people often forget is that massive growth also exposes every weakness inside an organization. Problems that once stayed hidden suddenly become public. Small mistakes become gigantic controversies. Internal tensions become impossible to ignore. That is exactly what is happening right now. The Fever are experiencing what happens when a sports franchise becomes bigger than its infrastructure was originally designed to handle. Because this is not normal fan behavior anymore. Normal fan bases do not generate millions of views debating offensive spacing. Normal fan bases do not analyze social media engagement numbers like Wall Street investors studying stock reports. Normal fan bases do not turn assistant coaching announcements into public outrage campaigns. This is something completely different. This is a modern internet-driven sports movement built around a transformational superstar and fueled by non-stop social media engagement. And the Fever are learning in real time that once that machine starts moving, it becomes almost impossible to control. The organization clearly wants stability. The fan base wants acceleration. That tension is at the center of everything. You can even see it in how fans talk about Caitlin Clark compared to how the organization talks about her. The organization emphasizes teamwork. Fans emphasize superstardom. The organization talks about development. Fans talk about maximizing greatness immediately. The organization promotes balance. Fans demand domination. Neither side necessarily believes they are wrong. They are simply operating from entirely different priorities. And when those priorities collide publicly every single day, the result is non-stop chaos. The Stephanie White situation perfectly represents that clash. To traditional basketball people, Stephanie White is an experienced coach with legitimate credentials. She understands defensive concepts. She understands professional systems. She understands roster management and long-term structure. But to a huge portion of the fan base, none of that matters if the offense feels restrictive around Caitlin Clark. Fans are judging everything through one lens. Does this maximize Caitlin? If the answer feels unclear, they become hostile instantly. That is why every offensive possession matters so much now. If Clark pushes tempo and creates highlight plays, fans celebrate. If the offense slows down into half-court sets and stagnant movement, frustration explodes online immediately. And this is where the Fever may have a major problem moving forward, because fan expectations are no longer realistic in the traditional sense. They are emotional expectations. Fans do not just want wins, they want validation. They want confirmation that the organization fully understands what Caitlin Clark represents culturally, financially, and stylistically. Anything less feels like betrayal to them. That is why the accusations against Stephanie White have become so extreme online. Some fans genuinely talk about her as if she is intentionally fighting against her own superstar player. Whether that is true or absurd almost becomes irrelevant once enough people emotionally believe it. Narratives are powerful. And right now, the dominant narrative online is that the Fever organization still does not fully trust Caitlin Clark to completely own the franchise offensively. That perception alone creates enormous pressure, because if the team struggles early, fans will not interpret it as normal growing pains. They will interpret it as proof they were right all along. And sports history shows how dangerous that kind of environment can become. Once fans emotionally lock into a narrative, every future event gets filtered through it. A close loss becomes, see, the offense is broken. A slow quarter becomes, they are taking the ball out of her hands again. A bad shooting night becomes, she has no rhythm because of the system. Everything reinforces the existing belief. That is why the Fever are operating under conditions most teams never face. Usually organizations can shape public messaging over time, but with this fan base, control has already shifted outward. The internet now drives the emotional energy around the team more than official messaging does. And the internet thrives on extremes. Nuance gets buried, patience disappears, emotion dominates everything. That creates an almost impossible communication challenge for the organization. Because even if Stephanie White makes a perfectly logical basketball adjustment, many fans are already predisposed to distrust it. That distrust is the real crisis. Not wins and losses yet, not chemistry yet, trust. Fans no longer automatically believe the organization has the same vision they do for Caitlin Clark's future. And rebuilding trust with a hyper-online fan base is incredibly difficult once skepticism becomes deeply rooted, especially when every game is nationally televised and every mistake instantly goes viral. The Fever are no longer operating in a normal WNBA environment. They are operating inside the modern attention economy. That means engagement drives everything. Attention is currency now, and Caitlin Clark generates attention at a level the league has never experienced before. That is why the roster engagement numbers became such a massive talking point. Those numbers revealed the uncomfortable truth about where fan energy is actually concentrated. Not equally across the roster, not equally across the coaching staff, not equally across the organization. The emotional investment overwhelmingly revolves around Caitlin Clark and the personalities fans associate with her style of basketball. That is why Sophie Cunningham's engagement numbers shocked so many people. It was proof that fans are emotionally rewarding players who fit the new entertainment-driven identity of the league. Toughness, confidence, attitude, emotion, intensity. Modern audiences connect with that immediately. And honestly, the WNBA may need to embrace this shift rather than resist it. Because sports today are not consumed the same way they were 20 years ago. Fans want storylines. They want personalities, they want conflict, they want emotional investment. The league suddenly has all of that now because of Caitlin Clark's arrival. But the challenge is that emotional audiences are much harder to manage. Casual viewers disappear quietly. Emotionally invested fans become louder when disappointed. And the Fever fan base is emotionally invested at an almost unprecedented level. That means expectations will continue rising no matter what. If Clark averages huge numbers, fans will demand playoff success. If the Fever make the playoffs, fans will demand championships. If they win championships, fans will demand a dynasty. That is how superstar fandom works. The standards never stop climbing. And the front office may not fully understand yet that they are no longer being evaluated like a normal rebuilding franchise. They are being evaluated like a global entertainment brand. That changes everything. Every public statement matters. Every social media post matters. Every rotation matters. Every minute distribution matters. Every marketing decision matters. Fans are watching all of it, and they are connecting dots constantly, sometimes fairly, sometimes unfairly, but always passionately. That passion is both the Fever's greatest strength and their greatest danger, because if the organization eventually aligns with fan expectations and starts winning consistently while playing an exciting style around Caitlin Clark, this could become one of the biggest success stories in modern sports. The ratings could become historic. The merchandise sales could become absurd. The cultural reach could expand globally. The WNBA could permanently transform into a mainstream sports product. The upside is enormous, but the downside is also massive, because if the Fever stumble badly under this spotlight, the backlash will be relentless. Not just because of basketball losses, because fans will feel like the league wasted a once-in-a-generation opportunity. And that fear drives almost every heated conversation surrounding this team right now. You can feel the anxiety underneath the anger. Fans are terrified that politics, ego, outdated thinking, or organizational stubbornness could interfere with something that feels historically important to them. That is why they react so strongly to seemingly small things. A substitution pattern becomes symbolic. An off-ball possession becomes symbolic. A coach's quote becomes symbolic. Everything carries larger meaning now because the fan base believes the future of the league itself is connected to how Caitlin Clark is handled. That may sound dramatic, but economically there is some truth to it. The numbers do not lie. The attention spike is real. The revenue growth is real. The television interest is real. The sponsorship growth is real. Clark changed the scale of the league almost instantly, so naturally fans feel protective of the thing they believe created that growth. And from their perspective, anyone who appears to slow down that momentum becomes the villain immediately. Right now, Stephanie White is carrying that burden. Fairly or unfairly, she has become the central target for every fear, frustration, and anxiety surrounding the Fever. And unless the team starts producing immediate success on the court, that pressure is only going to intensify. Because opening night is not just another game anymore. It is a test of the offense, a test of the coaching philosophy, a test of the front office vision, a test of whether the Fever truly understand the moment they are standing in. And if the results disappoint fans early, the internet reaction could become absolutely overwhelming. Because this fan base is no longer watching quietly, they are watching like stakeholders, and stakeholders demand results.